computer. All right, welcome to Argent Alpha Unscripted with my buddy Nick Addante. I think it was Friday or Saturday. I texted Nick a picture of two perfectly prepared chuck eye steaks, um, medium rare, maybe almost medium. I might have cooked them just a hair too long, but you recommended that cut as a little known cut, and it delivered, man. It was delicious.
I love that steak, and you did a great job. It looked perfect.
Yeah, it was
So
great. It was great. Oh, and apologies. Nick has a little guy in back of him, so if you get any background noise, this is what you get when you get an entrepreneur with a young family. He pulls over, he does a Zoom call that we record and turn into a podcast. This is how life works nowadays.
you got to fit it in.
That's right. Well, hey, Nick, so you founded Arcadia Meat Market in Phoenix, 4 blocks from where I live, and you also recently went from co-owner to buying out your partner at Arizona Grass Raised Beef. So have you always been like a entrepreneur, or tell us a little bit about your story about how you end up being the guy you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I just had a hard time thinking of myself working for somebody uh, from a young age, and I've just always been a self-starter, thank God. So I was able to get involved in the business because I had a cousin that was a silent investor in Arizona Grass Raised. So I kind of got involved because of the connection with him. And then the founder of the company, Tim Peterson, had some life changes over the last few years, and he decided to step away from the beef company so that he could focus on the ranching side of it. And that's why we split everything last year in the middle of the summer is when
Okay.
all that went final. So yeah, I'm just trying to continue on the business of growing the grass-fed beef company here in the state, and trying to build connections with ranchers here in the state as well while I do it. So
So at Arizona Grass Raised Beef, do you own cattle, or is that really more like the production? I don't know if that's the right word, but talk a little bit about just the chain of the vertical chain. So
so we have a processing facility that's USDA inspected.
okay.
And that is a facility that's outside of Prescott, north of Prescott in Chino Valley. So that used to be a state inspected plant, and Tim was able to get that from the previous person that was running it. He took it over, upgraded it to where it's USDA so we could ship across state lines. That all happened about 10, 11 years ago. And I joined almost 10 years ago. I joined just over 9 years ago now,
Okay.
is when I first partnered. So I pulled over on the side of I-17 near Sunset Point, and one of his ranches um, is on the west side of the 17 here called the Boulder Creek. So we were buying some cattle from him. We still do when he's got them available, but our company has grown quite a bit to where we need to buy from other ranchers. He can't supply us with everything we need.
Okay.
And depending on the time of the year, there's different grasses that grow at different elevations here in the state. So we can pull beef from southeastern Arizona in the wintertime versus in the summertime, we can pull more from northeastern Arizona in the higher elevations, or north central Arizona. Um, I mean, we're able to pull from the Boulder Creek starting in the summertime, really is when we're able to pull from there. So the company itself doesn't own any cattle until we purchase them, and we purchase them just from the sale barn, just like anybody else. So unfortunately, we've got to compete with some of the packers and larger companies that have deep pockets, obviously, but they've also got contracts that they need to fill for, In-N-Out and Burger King and McDonald's and Wendy's and all that. So they've got, no matter what, to hit a certain quota for their orders. And sometimes we get in a little, bidding war against them, but most of the time they don't want the fat cows. And
Mhm.
so what we're buying are older fat cows that are 4 to 8 years old, and on average, they've had time to be on the range and get that intermuscular marbling that we really like, that builds flavor and tenderness. And you know, once they've stopped producing calves, then the rancher, you know, gives us a call or goes to the sale barn with those animals if they, break a tooth, or if they've got something that goes wrong with one of their legs. If they hurt their knee or something and they're just not able to be a producing animal anymore, then it's more valuable for the rancher to go ahead and sell it off to a company like ours, or a company that would take it then and then put it in a feedlot
Oh yeah.
and finish it out. So we just don't finish in a feedlot ever. So it's all just range cattle that have only lived on native forage. So there's never anything that's been planted. So we can't say that our beef is organic because it's not ever been on a pasture that's got organic seed that's been planted. Um, it's all National Forest, State Trust land, BLM. You're not allowed to plant anything on those lands. Uh, so it is organic 100%. We're just not able to say it's certified.
Yeah.
So, for our process and for what we do, I like to say it's better than organic because it's not an actual farm. They're grazing on native grasses and forage like mesquite and jojoba beans and all that kind of stuff that comes throughout the year that helps them, kind of beef up and get more carbs and add some fat to the carcass. Um, but yeah, that's kind of what we're doing is, we go throughout the state and we're purchasing beef as it comes to sale and as it comes available. And, the dream is to have more of an involvement in an actual herd and growing a herd where we're raising our own cattle for our company. I wish I had more money because that's the direction that I'd really like to go. So if any of your listeners are into that kind of thing and are wanting to back us, with growing the herd, we're really at an important time here in our history with having to do that. So right now, I don't know if your listeners know, but we're at about a 75-year low for cattle on the ground. And that's pretty scary. So a lot of the older generation ranchers, their children have moved into different industries, and there's not as many children taking over the family operation, and the value of ranches have gotten so much that it's become kind of a passion project for a lot of people with money to buy a ranch, and they don't necessarily use it to ranch, but they've got 50,000 acres and a really nice headquarters on it that they don't really use as a headquarters, but they use it as a house. That's becoming more commonplace. So we've got to find a way for us to save the industry and really bring cattle ranching back to the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going on, but it's important for our future and for the safety of our family and our community, to be able to have food and know that we have a supply chain here that's feeding our people. Right now I'll show you, this is the Boulder Creek Ranch.
Okay.
So,
So there's cows
there's,
out there somewhere.
yeah, I mean, this is one of his main ranches. It's just over 60,000 acres and it goes down to Lake Pleasant. Look at all that
Wow.
grass,
Yeah.
and the Bumblebee is just below this. And they run cattle on it. And then he's got another ranch on the other side called the Double F. So,
So
he's one of, 5,000 other ranchers, but there's only certain number of those 5,000 that are doing it at scale. Well, most
yeah.
people have 1 to 2 cows, you
So
know.
talk a little bit about the if there's a continuum. And I don't know if it starts with grain fed and then you're on the other end of the continuum, grass fed and finished or grass raised. But what there, I think as consumers, we hear a lot of different terms out there. What are the main ones that, again, this is just to educate, not really compare, but the diets of the cattle?
Well, I mean, the bulk of beef.
There we go.
Sorry, buddy.
We now have a guest. He's officially the
No,
youngest
we have
guest.
a. No, we got a guest. This is Asher.
Hey,
Um,
Ashley.
so most of the beef in the industry are corn fed.
Mhm.
It's an easy, cheap way for us to feed cattle, and that's really been the case since, I don't know, the 50s, 60s, 70s, when Monsanto started doing Roundup Ready seeds and really mass producing corn so that we could put it in everything. So the bulk of the beef that we have available to us has been, fed a ration of some form of grain and other grasses that have been mixed in, and that could be referred to as silage in some
Mhm.
cases. But there's different levels of feed um, that they'll feed to different animals based on if they're a dairy cow or if they're a beef cow, and where they're at in their lifespan.
Okay.
So, um, I mean, primarily from what I understand, and the reason why I got into the business is just, grains are more acidic and they promote inflammation. And, what I kind of was learning about a decade ago is that, you know, ruminants aren't meant to eat grain. And so I thought grass fed was important because of that. And I also thought because of the sustainability side of everything, factory farmed beef to me doesn't seem like the way of the future. It seems like it's a good way to feed a lot of people, but I don't necessarily believe in the process. Um, Ranching on native land seems like the way to do it. So the fact that our company just kind of, falls in line with that supply chain to me was really important. Um, and we don't have to truck any feed from anywhere else in the country or across the state to move it to a feedlot to then feed the animals. A lot of the dairies now, they're huge and they have a lot of land around the dairy, so they grow their feed close to the dairy so that they don't have that like all that expense of um, fuel and paying a driver, and the insurance and all the things that go into just the logistics of having to move the feed for the animals,
Yeah.
um, or even the manure for that matter. So I'm trying to find a way to build a better system to where we can tie into what Tim has in his ranching operation and his network of other cattle ranchers here. And there's a property that he has that has some farmland that used to be it was used back in the 70s and 80s, but it hasn't been used since. Just to kind of revitalize the system here with more food production being done, at a scale that's it's still small, but it could help kind of supplement the needs of the community. Because the bottom line is there's not enough beef here in the state to feed everybody, and I want to say there's just under a million head of cattle, and of those, there's only so many that are mama cows with calves. There's only so many that are steer. There's other dairy cows, that are just producing dairy. I would say that's about 300 to 350 is the last time I read the stats. So it breaks down in a way that it makes sense, but we need more of it.
Hmm.
So, if we're at a 75-year low, I don't know what Arizona was at back then, but I know that Yavapai County has the lowest numbers. It's gone less than half of what it was 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And I just learned that from some of these old timers, that are in the business, and they're talking in our meetings about it, and it's a dire situation that people need to be aware of. And if people think it's important, they can contact the Arizona cattle growers and find out any way that they can help and get involved. Um, that organization has lobbyists that are representing cattlemen and ranchers and farmers throughout the state. In Washington, against some of the environmentalists and lobbyists that are fighting against grazing rights.
Hmm.
That there's a battle that's being fought, for decades now, and it's trying to centralize food production and demonize meat and cow farts this and global warming that. But there's a lot of money behind that, and if we want to save what we have access to now, we want to make sure that we are in control of the food that we have for ourselves. Like, we need to make sure we're fighting against those fucking idiots.
Yeah, I agree. And I
They
think,
have they have an agenda, and if we're not there represented by organizations like the Cattle Growers or National Cattle Growers Association or Farm Bureau, the producers are screwed
yeah.
because they're up against this a lot of money on
Mhm.
that side of the argument,
Well,
and
I
they're not
think,
and those people aren't boots on the ground. They're not the ones doing it. They're ones, they're looking from a desk and saying, hey, this can save this species here, so we shouldn't be grazing there, and they make it really difficult for ranchers to do their job.
Well, it's funny when the fake meat products launched, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago or so. Whenever you launch a new product, you need a villain. And so you need to villainize things like beef. But I think the market's pretty much rejected those fake meat products. I mean, they're just the public offerings started off well, but they've all tanked. And without naming names, it's like I think meat eaters still eat meat, and they have not switched into the fake meat. So um, I don't think that'll go away. But there'll probably be other salts. But you look at the ingredients of fake meat. Man, it's like it's a highly processed food versus I look at your product, there's one ingredient, cow.
Yeah,
You
yeah. And the environmental impact of what goes into making that fake meat that was supposed to be better for the environment.
Right.
It's all bullshit.
And it's worse for
So
humans too. It's like it's worse for the environment, it's worse for humans. Um, but anyway, we're not here to bash them. We're here to build up beef and grass raised and finished beef. And hey, if we
yeah.
walk into Arcadia Meat Market, what type of cattle do you typically sell? Because I know there's so many kinds. You mentioned dairy and beef, but within that there's different categories. Like I've heard you say limousine is one. But talk a little bit about that because I mean, I personally don't know much about the
So the
different types
bulk
of
of the
cattle.
beef that we buy as beef cows are Angus. That's the most popular. So
Mhm.
red and black Angus. That's mostly what ranchers raise, I would say. Holsteins are dairy cows. Herefords are the red cows that you see with like a mop face, maybe. So they'll have like a little bit of white and red. Those are
Mhm.
really good beef cattle. So the bulk of what we sell or that we'll purchase from ranchers here are black and red Angus and Herefords.
Perfect. Okay.
There's Charlet is a really pretty cow that's got amazing beef quality, and we'll get them every once in a while. There's a couple growers here that have belted Galloways, which are really cool. Your listeners could look those up online. It's kind of a neat breed that's really nice for beef, but we don't get those often because they're not great in the heat. They don't do well in the heat, so they're
Okay.
up at higher elevations.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think we are what we eat, and if you compare what we sell, um, we're selling beef that's only been on open range, so they've got all these different nutrients that they're getting from different plants that they're feeding on throughout the year. And then if you go to like a dairy, they're just sitting there and they're getting fed a ration, and that ration's decided they don't have to forage. They can just get fat and produce milk. They don't need to work for their food. And then, it imparts a flavor that's going to be different than what you would get from an animal that's grazing, on native grasses.
Hmm.
So there's in Japan, they use the spent grain from the sake production to feed
Hmm.
cattle. Not all of it, but some wagyu is, they used to say, oh, they give them massages and sake and feed them all like this really great diet. Well, no, I mean it's like whiskey and sake grain that's spent. They're able to feed those to the cattle, and that really gives them a lot of fat, super high fat content. Well, it also imparts a specific flavor.
Hmm.
If you take our tenderloin, our grass-fed tenderloin, which should arguably have the least flavor in the cow because there's not a lot of blood flow, it doesn't get worked. You'd put that next to a grain-fed tenderloin, and it's going to have a different flavor. Some people would say they like it more. Some people would say they prefer the grain-fed or grain finished. Um, I happen to like grass-fed.
Hmm.
Just, I'm not going to say that I won't eat a corn-fed steak. Um, you know, I'm I'm really aware of the fact that most of the corn-fed steak has been fed corn that's been sprayed with, you know, Roundup and all that. So I'm, reluctant to go down that. But there's some corn-fed growers that are down in southern Arizona that are growing their own feed, milling their own feed. It's all organically grown, and they've got a good product.
Hmm.
And that's what they want to stand behind. And I can't say that ours is better or worse or whatever. It's just different. So there's ways of doing it right. It's just the bulk of what's out there is just done, by factory,
So
mass production
does
feedlots.
does your product fall under regenerative farming, or is that a different category, or is it
Our
adjacent?
lamb, our lamb and our chicken, and our pork does.
Okay.
So our beef doesn't necessarily. I mean, I would say I don't know what the classification is exactly, but like rotational grazing is what I think of when I think of regenerative farming.
Okay.
And so you have to have a pasture and you've got to move the animals one species at a time after another to fertilize the soil. After one group has passed, the next group can go through. And it's, replenishing all the nutrients in the soil by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but, we're grazing. So the word sustainable is, obviously a lot of businesses use that and they've been using it for over a decade. I It's in our mission statement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you could argue what does sustainable mean, but I think that grazing animals on native grass is probably one of the most sustainable ways you can raise livestock.
Mm-hmm.
It might not get you to the end and get you a super fat, cow that's ready to slaughter at 1,500 pounds in less than 3 years, but it'll get you, the supply and
Mm-hmm.
the calves on the ground, and then feed that system so that all feeders need ranchers or calf cow operations where they're producing calves to replace the steers that are fed out, or the heifers that are fed out, or the bulls that need to be slaughtered because they need to be replaced because they've hit their lifespan,
Mm-hmm.
and their economic lifespan's done. So they've been slaughtered, and then they got to be replaced. So we need this system to be fed by the calf cow operators, and then feeders are all part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're doing, if you look at it, we're kind of just sifting 10%, because that's on average what a rancher will cull is, from what, the ranchers I talk to, that's about a number that is tossed around that's generally acceptable. And, we're taking those 10% of beef that they're taking off the ranches, and we're able to pick from that, the cream of the crop, and really buy what I think is, better quality beef. So right now I've got a trailer hooked up and I'm going down to Marana to go buy our beef for the week, um, this afternoon, so that we can have beef to kill on Friday. And a lot of what we do, I see myself, and then if I'm not there, we have a buyer that's been working with us for over 5 or 6 years now, and we trust his eye, and he knows exactly what to look for and what our criteria is. And so we make sure that we just hit that every time.
Hey, when somebody walks into Arcadia Meat Market, and is it typically the educated buyer who gets what you're about, or do you get someone wandering in who has no clue? And then how do you? Because I've met a number of your staff, and they all know their stuff. I mean, I was just talking to with Alex, I think, last week, and
Yeah.
yeah, he's a good guy, and we were going deep. We got off on if you guys weren't busy, we would have probably still be talking just about structured water, and we went way off the meat topic. But how do you educate consumers who are new to understanding what you're about?
So real quick, so Alex used to be a customer of ours, and he kept coming in and he would ask me, "Hey, whenever you're hiring, I'd like to work here," because he was working at another grocery store that we don't need to name. And he's been with us now for almost 5 years. He's
Okay.
great. He lives it. He breathes it. And that's why he's happy where he's at. And I love having him. But there's most of everybody that walks in the door, they don't know. They're just looking for a meat shop, or they were driving by and they wanted to check it out. Some people were referred by their doctor or their chiropractor to come and get bone broth or whatever. But most everyone that walks in the door, they don't know what they're looking at, and we have to explain, what we're about.
Hmm.
And from the very beginning, I was always really aware and self-conscious of our prices, and I was afraid to charge what we truly need to charge to make this whole thing work. And I was losing my tail, for a while, the first couple of years, and I'm still like, we barely, I want to charge what's fair, and then make sure that everybody's paid, everybody's happy, and our customer feels like they got a fair deal, and we're able to stay there, in business in perpetuity. That's all I'm looking for.
Mhm.
But we've got to educate people that it's on us to explain, there's a reason why our ground beef is $9 a pound. And there's a reason why our sausages are, they start at $14 a pound and go up from there. All the spices that we use are all organic. Everything we do in there is organic. And I don't nickel and dime my staff. They've got to show up every day and show up the next day and show up the next day and feel like, they're getting paid what they're worth, and they've got to be happy with their situation. So, I've got to educate people about that. So
Mhm.
it's been it's a process that I'm still trying to learn as to like what to leave in and what to leave out.
Mhm.
Sometimes, which is why I'm usually not at the register, because I don't need to sing the song and dance all the time. But it really is just a matter of educating people. This is what we do. We break down the beef. We talk about pork. We talk about our lamb supply down in Wilcox and our chicken supplier, and then all the rest of the stuff, and then kind of let people just absorb it and take it in, and then kind of choose from there what direction do they want to go, because
Well,
everybody's on a different level. Like you
yeah.
understand the system, not everybody does. Some people don't eat beef, some people only eat chicken, some people come in for our microgreens because that's the only place they can get them. It's we get all sorts of people that are coming for different reasons.
Well, one of the things I was talking with Alex and a woman too, and I didn't catch her name. She was working the same shift as Alex. Super friendly. Would you remember her name?
Francis.
Francis. Okay, we were talking. I said, hey, I know Nick, and I said I'm looking for a mouse steak and a Merlot steak, and they laughed and go, "We Nick's got to stop telling people about these cuts because we won't get any for ourselves." But I thought that was pretty funny. Um,
They're
but
good.
yeah, they're good. But I think what's interesting when you walk into a shop like that, one, um, you get knowledge, you understand more about sourcing, why sourcing is important. You get all these complementary products like the sourdough bread, the raw milk, these organic spices, like where salt, what is good salt versus bad salt that might have heavy metals in it. Um, Depending on what you're interested in. When I was in there, there's a young lady, she was all about the poultry and didn't want anything to do with the beef. She was over on the right side. I was looking straight ahead, and then on the left was the frozen. And it's this tight little shop, which I kind of like because you get to see everything. And so I think anybody listens, if you're in the Phoenix area or Scottsdale area, you got to stop by because it's a unique place. And then you just opened a spot up in Prescott Valley, I think, called Open Range.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Open range market.
yeah.
We couldn't call it Arcadia, and I needed to think of some other name that eluded exactly what it was. But yeah, it's right off of Highway 69 between the 17 and Prescott, about 15 miles off the 17.
Okay,
So yeah,
gotcha.
we just opened a few weeks ago, and we're still inching our way to completing everything. But yeah, we'll have a bakery in there from uh, Brian, who is Frisco at Arcadia Meat Market. Him and his wife are opening a bakery called Abe Bakery, so they'll have croissants and some other pastries. And then we've got Feather and Flame Bone Broth is going to start operating out of our kitchen, I believe,
Hmm,
uh, at the end of the month as well.
okay.
So yeah, we'll be doing a lot more food production out of that space, because we don't have it at Arcadia right now. It's too
Um,
tight.
Hey, I'm curious about you just personally. Are you a carnivore guy, keto guy, paleo guy, none of the above, or how would you?
I'm pretty carnivore, and I do eat like, I'll eat bread or pizza because I got kids, and I like bread. We sell really good bread, so I'll grab some, every once in a while when I'm leaving. But for the most part, I eat once a day. Um, Dinner, I eat a big dinner, so I'm fasting throughout most of the day outside of like coffee, and if I have a bar
So you're like an
or some
OMAD
jerky.
guy. You're like an OMAD guy, one meal a day,
Pretty much. I
pretty
mean,
much.
sometimes the meal lasts a little longer at night because I'll go back to the refrigerator because I didn't get
Sure.
enough, but depending on how late I'm up. But
Yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
for the most part, I'm just doing dinner.
And
So
have you noticed, I don't know how long you've been eating that way, but did you notice an improvement in your body composition when you switched into eating that way?
yeah, for sure. And I mean, the reason I started, I was training a lot for Ironman before the butcher shop, and that's how I got into this whole thing. I
Okay.
really cared about health, and then I started looking at what I was eating, and then I realized, hey, I could be a partner in AZ, and then the butcher shop came to be. And when if I'm full, I'm not going to work. And so if I have a 16 or 18-hour day to do, the last thing I'm going to do in the middle of that is eat. So I would just wait until the end of the day and eat at the end of the day and then do it all over again the next. And so I just kind of naturally fell into that
Hmm.
cycle of just fasting because I'm not one to sit down and stop and have a meal in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And if you're butchering, that just doesn't go hand in hand. And I can just eat raw meat as I go. Little sample along the
Yeah,
way, got to taste the grind or taste the liver.
that's right.
Uh, but yeah, for the most part, I'm just dinner.
Well, yeah, for anybody who's familiar with Argent Alpha, we do live events. We do 2 a year, one in Minneapolis, one in Phoenix, Scottsdale. And the last 2 years, and now coming up on 3 years, Nick has been our Saturday night guy. He comes in, he's grilled steaks. He's brought in, I think, some slow cooked beef. And a bunch of other stuff. And it's been awesome. This year we're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna have it at Judge's house, so we might have to. We're gonna have to talk about like prepared. There won't be a grill, anything. I don't think on site, so we might have to talk about batch cooking beforehand. But anyway, it's been great. Everybody's loved it. I think we did some kind of tacos last year, but
Yeah, we
it,
had the green chili beef, and we also had smoked brisket.
okay, yeah, smoked brisket,
Yeah,
yeah. And then some amazing tortillas. You had your beef tallow there. You had some other local products from your shop too. I can't remember the names, but all well received. And that was, after a big day, it's not nothing like having a big meal with high quality ingredients and
yeah. You guys feast.
yeah, yeah, we
You
do.
don't have a problem eating it at the end of that day. That's for sure.
No, it's been great. So tell us a little bit about, you mentioned earlier a little bit about what's next. You'd love to own cattle. You've got a processing facility. You've got two retail fronts. You're an entrepreneur. Like, what do you think is realistic in the next couple of years that will it be more retail, more processing capacity, or will you get into like owning land and cattle and that sort of thing?
It's all of the things at the same time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we're looking at doing smaller storefronts like what I'm doing in Dewey, just where it's more of a grab and go grocery situation that doesn't need a whole lot of support behind it other than just some inventory, um, so that we can do other markets in the valley specifically and in other places eventually.
Mhm.
But the facility we have where we slaughter right now, we've talked a lot in the past about using it more just for slaughtering and for harvesting, and then sending those carcasses then to a further processing facility. So in the years to come, hopefully we're able to grow into that, because then we'll be able to provide more for the community that needs their animals processed.
Mhm.
We can only do so many right now each week, and it's because we do all the production in one location. So if we kind of split it, it would give us just more opportunity to do higher volume.
Yeah.
So that's, and if that happens, that's kind of the direction I think we might go. But we'll see.
Yeah.
The best part about being an entrepreneur is you can have the dream and have the vision and think you know where you're going, and then you learn along the way that there was a different plan,
Hmm.
or something that you didn't see came to be, and all of a sudden you're in a new situation. So,
So let me ask you this. I'll put you on the spot.
yeah.
Assume there's not a legal reason you couldn't do this, but so there's how guys will fly into Alaska, they'll do salmon or halibut, or you might hire a guide and go hunting. Would you ever facilitate an event where, let's just say it was our 25 guys from a live event show up, you teach us here's the animal comes in, it's slaughtered, it's butchered, and then every guy takes away 1/25th. You package it and ship it to us at home. But we get to
Yeah,
see the
I mean,
process to see like because I think people get so separated from where their food comes from. That's why I love talking to hunters. Hunters know exactly where their food. I mean, we've got a couple guys who are elk hunters, and they're out there in the mountains of Colorado shooting it, dressing it, and then it gets, shipped to them at home. But when they go in the freezer, one of our guys, Tom Shaver, he's got 150, 180 pounds of elk in his freezer, and he knows, I bet every time he takes a bite, he's picturing that experience. And so this would be for the non-hunters, but is that something you would ever entertain?
yeah, for sure. I mean, we've done classes at the butcher shop where we do a pig and I show everybody, or a lamb I've done before. I've done a quarter beef. Um, we could do it at the plant, no problem. You know, if there's a small group of people that would want to do that, we could go up on a day where we're processing and they could see the whole thing. And I mean, the truth is, you know, we could just divvy it up based on what the weight would be. People
Sure.
could just go home with what they had that day from a different animal.
Okay.
It's, you know, but yes, for sure. I think it's important. I let kids go into the back of the shop all the time. When I was in there every day, that was a big thing for me. If children come in, it's like, hey, you want to come and see the back? I want people to know, like, it's important for children to understand where their food comes from.
Right.
And I mean, adults too. I would have adults come in and scream because they saw chicken feet in the meat case, and it's like, what planet are you from?
Hmm.
Like, you don't think chickens have feet? And by the way, that's like one of the most, that's so much collagen and goodness from that.
Hmm.
Like, she just had no idea because she's used to going to Safeway and just, you know, buying something that's in a foam tray with cellophane on top and the price tag.
Right.
You know? But yeah, I'm all for educating and for letting people see, you know, the process of what we do, and you know, even in the shop or up at our plant, you know,
Yeah.
anytime.
All right. Well, that might be a future live event where maybe that becomes like the Saturday event and we figure out some stuff out on one of the ranges for like our physical event part of it. And then we end with getting educated. And then maybe we'd actually then eat something at the end of the day that we saw grazing
There
over
you
there.
go.
That'd be
Yeah.
that'd be pretty cool. I mean, I think anybody listening to this is probably gonna go, hell yeah. I doubt we have any um, too many vegan types listening to this podcast, but if they are, it's like, come on over to, the water's warm. Um, no, that's awesome. Well, hey, thanks to Asher, man. What well-behaved little guy. What is he, 6 months old?
Just about. Yeah.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. Almost.
Wow.
Yeah. Thanks for letting him be a guest.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. Well, I'll put links to your websites into the podcast descript show notes. Anybody in Phoenix, check out Arcadia Meat Markets. And if you're online anywhere in the country, Arizona grass-raised beef, just Google that. You'll find Nick's website. You guys ship to every state, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. Until the summertime, we'll probably cut back once it gets warm. But
Okay.
right now, we're shipping everywhere.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well,
All
thanks,
right.
Nick. Appreciate it. It's been good
Hey,
chatting with you.
thank you, Scott. You
Thanks.
too. Take
Yeah. Have
care.
a good one. See ya.